Doing great, man. We survived the carnage of the last 48 hours, still ticking, got some sleep, built a lot of things that I had no desire to build. But, we're here, and we got one last full slate of NFL DFS on the table for us. And it's not even like a super weird 17 like usual, but we'll get into it. So, yeah, man, it's good to see you guys one last time, before the new year.
Yeah, it's good to see you, too. And it's also good to see John Daigle, who is now 11 months from his next birthday. So, Mr. Daigle, how are we doing, buddy?
This is like happy birthday plus 4 or something like that.
Yes, I know. We're 11 months away. Planning your weekend now.
Y'all are the ones with kids. I mean, you're the ones with holidays to speak of. I spent my holidays getting back at 3 a.m. and messaging Reeves photos of pizza and cheesecake because I spent it in New York on my own. So
I'm just really glad the P word that you said was pizza right there, because when I heard at 3 a.m. texting Reeves pictures up, and I was like, oh no, what's about to happen here? So I'm glad you said pizza, buddy.
I finished it off with pizza, yeah.
I'm sure you did. All right, guys, before we jump into the slate, YouTube, y'all are back for us. Welcome back. It's good to be back. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure you type in what you're doing. When you comment on here, make sure you say what you're doing to prepare for John Daigle's next birthday, 11 months away. So we got to get moving. Oh, no, don't be shaking that head, Mr. Daigle. Come on, don't be doing that. Also, new price on the college football package for the bowl games, $40 for all content through the national championship. You're going to get full access to projections and lineup HQ, expert rankings, survey, tags, and of course the Discord chat access. And I'm going to tell you, as somebody who doesn't know a damn thing about college football, but I've been doing pretty well on it just because I've been listening to these guys. There are a billion games out there. Don't force yourself, don't drive yourself crazy by doing all this work yourself. Let the RotoGrinders guys help you out, and for $40, it's a pretty damn good deal. And also, want to thank these guys for rocking the RotoGrinders badge and the RotoGrinders badge promo. We got Busy 24, SBD 2432, Compact 26.3, Mustard Mac, and of course, who could forget Neighbors World? So, thanks for rocking the RotoGrinders badge, guys. But Reeves, week 17. It's always a weird week because there are teams out there with not a lot to play for. Baltimore, they were already resting their starters. It sounds like Minnesota, they're going to be sitting a bunch of guys. The Rams may not be getting the same kind of usage out of guys like Gurley and Woods that we've come to expect. What does Houston do? We don't know. Buffalo, they say they're going to be playing their starters. I don't believe him. Reeves, how do you approach a slate like this where it's Thursday night and we've still got a lot of uncertainty?
Yeah, it's always unique, it's like half preseason and half like real DFS, like merged into one. We've typically had like a smash spot that's always worked. Remember 2 years ago it was Rex Burkhead. Last year it was Dwayne Washington at min price. I remember the first half of that game he was terrible and then was really good and rushed for like 100 yards in the second half of that game versus Carolina. But we don't have any of these like real good like backup smash guys. I mean, I would love for it to be Justice Hill as a Justice Hill stand, but
hey, that means that your best ball shares will finally do okay, right?
No, those do not carry into week 17, unfortunately. So those are big fat zeros still. I don't know how many teams he won me any money on, but I'm going to tell you it was less than one. But yeah, so I mean, even like a guy like Justice Hill, though, is going to be running into one of the best defenses in the NFL that has something to play for. So it's not even like a really great like spot for him if he gets a bunch of touches. So it's really weird. We don't have any of these like glowing backup spots. I mean, we all saw how good the Mike Boone experiment went on Monday night for everyone that, rushed to elevate him into lower RB1 status. And instead, we've got Amir Abdullah on the field for 32 snaps. So we can't even go to like hit Mike Boone and say, all right, well, we'll just bounce back and we'll hit this again. But there really aren't any of those real great gems right now. Yeah, but Daigle, it feels to me like, we're still, 3 days away from the slate starting. It feels like we've still got time to get some news that after this show airs. And again, guys, we're recording this on Thursday night. But after this show airs over the next 3 days, Daigle, it feels like we're going to have some news hit, and that is very likely going to open up some value.
It's the same as Rich, though, for me, where I started setting up looking for those value plays, and there are a few guys here and there, but really you're kind of paying up still. We know playoff situations by now. We pretty much have a good glimpse of who is going to rest who, and yes, they may change over the next 48 hours, but for the most part, we got our games we're going to talk about, and I think the exposure is going to be going to these 3 contests we're going to discuss heavily.
Yeah, it's one of those slates where Normally week 17, we have that elite smash lock button value. I don't think we have that yet, so hopefully we can find a few guys during this show, and of course, as the week goes on.
Maybe they'll give us Darrell Henderson or something later in the week. They'll just say they're not going to play Gurley. They're going to say, well, maybe we'll just have one Darrell Henderson week this season for everyone else's best ball teams.
I do enjoy, though, how all of us had the same thought. Like, I also went to DraftKings looking at Justice Hill's price. The moment week 17 slate was released, I was like, finally, we are here. And, of course, it's still pretty high.
Yeah, poor Darrell Henderson and Justice Hill, those guys can go with each other, and you know what I think they can do to each other while they're in that room. All right, Atlanta at Tampa. It's a 48-point total. Tampa Bay 1-point favorites at home. And, of course, we have the Rashad Perriman, Justin Watson pairing for the Tampa Bay Bucks. Julio Jones, he's getting 40% of the targets since Calvin Ridley goes down. Daigle, when you look at this game, we've got two offenses that love to throw. We have, outside of Julio Jones, a bunch of dudes we really don't want to click on the button as far as pass catchers go. What are we doing with these two passing attacks, Daigle?
I mean, we talked about this spot for the Bucks just last week. Remember, we came on the show and said, oh, well, like Houston's defense, whatever, with Jameis Winston. But here's the thing with Falcons defense. We've talked about Falcons defense now for a little while, and it's because they had that 2-game stretch, recall, outside of their week 9 bye. They came back, shut out Drew Brees and Kyle Allen for a total of 12 points. And then Jameis Winston ran over them for 313 yards and 3 touchdowns. But in that time, that's kind of the only performance this Falcons defense has been under the weather. That's the only time since week 10 they've allowed a QB1, a top 12 performance. And it would happen to be against Jameis Winston. So it's a weird spot to where, yes, he did outperform what they were bringing to the table previously. But at the same time, their defense has been pretty good. We don't even have Ishmael Hyman for Jameis Winston anymore. He got waived after that one game. He's gone now. They brought back Jaden Mickens, who flashed with Jacksonville's offense.
His name is Ishmael Byman.
That's very that's a good dad joke post-Christmas, by the way.
Thank you.
I'm sure little Crane's going to look forward to those in 5 years' time. But so for Jameis Winston, though, either way, we know where the targets are going, and we know it's going to be Perriman, which if you didn't want to pay up for $6K on a 3-game slate, look at his salary across sites now. And Justin Watson, who did get there and still remains quite reasonably priced, actually.
Dude, they just hate O.J. Howard. Like, this is unbelievable, Reeves. Like, I mean, I know he had 15 targets the last 2 weeks, and he had 16 points over on DraftKings. He's still 4-3. Reeves, what do you say we run it back one more time and light some more O.J. Howard money on fire?
We only have one more week to lose money with O.J. Howard. I mean,
hey, there's always next season, baby.
I mean, he's still getting looks. It's just the problem is he's shown no ceiling at all this whole season. I mean, when he gets there, he barely gets there. But he has accounted for 15% of the team targets, over the past 4 games, played 85% of snaps. Atlanta's allowed a top 12 scoring tight end in 3 of their past 4 games. I mean, if there's one more week for us to lose money with all the familiar guys we've lost money on this season, might as well keep going back to that well. I mean, Jameis is he's had such a peculiar season, man, and obviously a lot of people know that. But comes into this game with 4,900 passing yards. He has 11 300-yard passing games. That's tied for the 3rd most in NFL history, and he can jump to 2nd if he throws another one this week. He still got the 300 last week, and he was bad without Mike Evans and without Chris Godwin. I mean, he threw for just 7 yards per pass attempt. That was his lowest in a game since week 11. He completed just 52% of his passes. That was his 2nd lowest rate of the season. So, I mean, having those guys off the field did have an impact on him, but they're still going to drop back a ton. That's what they do. He's still going to throw it. He's going to throw some to the other team, some to his team. He can be the first quarterback ever in NFL history to go 30 for 30. Remember that used to be a big baseball thing? Like Jose Canseco would go 30 for 30, or like you'd be like, 30 steals, 30 homers. Yeah. Jameis has got going for the 30 tuds and the 30 picks. We can get 2 to the Falcons this week. I mean, just what a peculiar player. But he's consistently, generally does find his way to fantasy value. Just maybe we've seen like his ceiling just be capped now without having the weaponry. Perriman has been getting like these nice solid. He had the monster game in Detroit. Had another solid game last week, 7 for 102. Led the team with 12 targets, which is 25%. So, I mean, he's still kind of just hitting still. Watson is like not very exciting, just 10.2 yards per catch, but he's getting those end zone targets in both of those games. And there's really no one else they're throwing to. I mean, they're throwing to those top 4 guys. They're going to dump off a little bit to the running backs. Cameron Brate's going to get 4 or 5 targets, but those are the guys that are still getting the volume in the passing game.
Yeah, it's amazing because I had somebody argue last week, and I thought it was really interesting that Jameis is how bad and how often he throws to the other team is actually really good for his fantasy because that just means he's playing from behind, so he's going to chuck it even more. And it makes a lot of sense, I think. Like Jameis, 6'6", yeah, it's a lot to pay for him. You pair him with Rashad Perriman, which I don't know. I couldn't do it last week. I don't think I'm going to do it this week, especially on a full slate. Maybe I'm just lighting it on fire by fading Rashad Perriman. If that's the way 2019 ends, then so be it. On the Atlanta side, we've got Devontae Freeman. He's priced up after a few good weeks. I don't really want to play him against this Tampa Bay defense, but to me, Daigle, the only guy I'm really looking at here, Austin Hooper and Julio Jones. And Julio Jones, 40% target share since Calvin Ridley went down. It's awfully tough to ignore him.
Agree. And by the way, this Jameis Winston, you want to get it even wackier. He only needs 327 yards to finish with the most single season passing yards, number 3 all time. He still needs over 400 to get there for Peyton Manning. He's not going to do that. Well, at least we don't think so. But number 3 all time, is right there. It's probably going to happen. It's going to go down in the history books as one of the craziest seasons of all time. But the thing with the Falcons is that this, without Calvin Ridley, target tree has whittled down even more so than the Bucs has. As you mentioned, Julio Jones, 35 targets the past 2 games, 41% target share. And then we have Austin Hooper, who's ran 37 routes in each of the last 2 games. His snaps were down last week, but still 9 targets because they have nowhere else to go. Devontae Freeman will sprinkle in, and that's what you would be banking on if you play him. But it seems sort of point chasey, especially against this this front 7 that continues shutting out running backs, despite the fact their secondary is horrendous. Christian Blake would have been like the lone thing to hang your hat on last week because 2 weeks ago he did clearly get routes as their second receiver, but even he was scaled back last week. So really, for me, it's only become Julio Jones and to a lesser extent Austin Hooper, and that's about it.
Isn't Christian Blake the guy that used to play quarterback for the Bengals?
Perhaps.
That was Jeff Blake.
Jeff Blake. All right. I knew it was.
Jeff Blake to Darnay Scott, man. He used to the rainbow balls, some rainbow bombs.
Get pumped, everybody. I love it. I'm just glad we got Jeff.
Carl Pickens was underrated.
He was good.
Yeah.
Reeves, do you see anything other than Julio and Hooper in this game from the Atlanta side? Because I don't.
No, it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, Matt Ryan threw 45 passes last week, and 34 of them went to 3 players. I mean, the other guys are really the jabroniest of jabronis on this Falcons team. What's left? And like you said, you really can't count on Freeman. He had the 10 targets last week. That's probably all you're going to count on him for. The Bucs have allowed 4 rushing touchdowns over their past 3 games, but they're all from 1 or 2 yards closer. And Devontae Freeman has 1 carry from inside of the 5-yard line all season.
Yeah. So get ready for Quandre Allison.
Yeah, so I mean, he's going to have to house one from distance, and it's probably hard to bank on that against the Bucs. What's interesting too is that the Bucs have started to kind of write their way defensively too, at least on the stat sheet. They're allowing just 6.2 yards per pass attempt over their past 6 games, and they've faced Drew Brees, Deshaun Watson, and Matt Ryan himself over that span. Peppered in with some bad players as well, but they had put a lot of pressure on Matt Ryan the last time these teams played, and it was in Atlanta. He was pressured on 42% of his dropbacks. They sacked him 6 times. I mean, it could be a tougher spot. These teams historically have played in like shootouts, especially with Winston and Ryan together. The past 7 times they played, they've gone over 55 total points in 6 of those games. And Winston has absolutely like eviscerated the Falcons side. I mean, he's thrown 3 or more touchdowns against the Falcons in 6 straight matchups between these teams. So he's familiar with the defense, familiar with the scheme. Obviously, they're still trotting out a bunch of backups in the secondary for the Falcons. But yeah, it's Julio, it's Austin Hooper. Austin Hooper's way underpriced on FanDuel. He was way underpriced on DK last week, but then they probably I think DK incorporates ownership into part of their algorithm because whenever guys it bumps right back up. So he went up 1,000 already in just a week, but he's way underpriced on FanDuel.
All right, let's move on to Philadelphia at the Giants. 45.5-point totally 1.5-point favorites here. And we've talked about teams that have something to play for. The Eagles, they win, and they win the NFC East. They don't have to worry about what happens in Dallas. If they lose, Dallas can steal the NFC East. But here's a game. The Giants involved in the big-time shootout last week, of course, with Washington. Philadelphia involved in a game that was literally the most boring game out there against Dallas. And, Daigle, when you look at this game, Philadelphia, they're 4.5-point favorites, but the Giants have been playing better lately, man. The Giants have been putting up points. What do we think about this Giants side, Daigle?
I don't even know what to think about evaluating Daniel Jones. He's gone over 300 yards in 4 of his 12 starts, over 30 DraftKings points in 4 of those games. He has been Jameis Winston basically because he makes a ton of boneheaded decisions and has fumbling issues as well. But at the same time, that ceiling is something impressive. And this Philly defense should have given up that ceiling to Dak Prescott last week had he not been battling that AC joint injury he's still going for. Because Ronald Darby, I can't even count the number of times he was beat, but even like Michael Gallup fell short. Rather than a 79-yard touchdown, it became a 41-yard leaping grab that he had to do because Dak underthrew him. Dak also missed Tavon Austin for a wide-open 75-yard touchdown. Those are throws that Daniel Jones actually doesn't miss. So whether we have Darius Slayton on this board or not, between Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard, I absolutely love the spot for Daniel Jones.
Yeah, it's tough not to. Historically, home quarterbacks have done pretty well. I always struggle with these guys because I don't know who to pair them with. I prefer Shepard and Darius Slayton. But, Reeves, it feels weird to say that at 6.4K, Daniel Jones is in play. But here we are because, as we've seen, the ceiling with him is huge.
Yeah, he's what you like, especially when you're doing game stacks because he's shown that monster upside, like Daigle said. He's had, 4 more touchdowns in 4 games. That's what we like. And then the other thing, too, is the Eagles have not traveled at all. So they are 3rd in the NFL in points allowed per game at home at 16.8. They're allowing 29 points per game on the road. That's 29th in the NFL. Their pass defense has just really not traveled at all with them. They're allowing opposing quarterbacks to average 22.3 fantasy points per game on the road as opposed to 11.3 per game at home. The last 2 road quarterbacks they faced were Dwayne Haskins, who had 19 fantasy points and his best game of the year, threw for over 9 yards pass attempt, and Ryan Fitzpatrick, who had 27 fantasy points. So they just really haven't traveled. It hasn't mattered who they faced. They just really haven't shown up on the road. So we're getting them in a spot, too, where we know the Giants are – like Daniel Jones is one of those guys. Like, if he makes a mistake, it doesn't matter. He's one of those guys you can theoretically pair the defense against him, even though we're not going to chase the Eagles defense because they suck. But you could if you wanted to. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see. Darius Slayton was a limited participant at practice. He'd be the guy based on his price on the 2 sites for tournament stacking purposes because he's another one of those guys that has just shown the requisite ceiling. When Daniel Jones has these games, like Slayton's gone along for the ride a couple times and, had these 2 touchdown games. He obviously is the guy that burnt them twice too. The last time they played on Monday night with Eli, he had 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. Sterling Shepard has gotten rolling here though the past 2 weeks. He's had, 2 good games in a row against the Dolphins and against Washington. The Eagles are just really a team that we've targeted all year with wide receiver play. So we're not going to run from there. He's just typically not a guy I really love because he doesn't really possess like a really high ceiling or to put it on display a lot. But he has gotten in the past 2 weeks. If Slayton's out, it makes Golden Tate more interesting. And then if you want to chase touchdowns, the Eagles are no soft matchup for opposing tight ends so far this year, but Caden Smith's played 97% of snaps over the past 5 weeks. And in his 3 starts with Daniel Jones, he's been the tight end 5, the tight end 10, and the tight end 4. With 3 touchdowns in those games. I think it's a great spot to come off of Saquon. We talked about Saquon last week being kind of he shouldn't be matchup dependent, but his biggest games have come against these bottom dwelling run defenses and teams that allow all these high yards for scrimmage running backs, and he's crushed in those spots. But when he faces these high teams, he's not. When he hasn't faced a team that's in the bottom 10 and rushing points allowed per running backs, He's been the average RB 23 in PPR leagues at just 12.8 points per game. So it could be a week to come back off of him, let people point chase that a little bit, and focus on just the Giants passing game.
Yeah, and on the Eagles side, of course, these guys are all kinds of banged up. I mean, it sounds like Jordan Howard is going to be back this week, but the coaching staff has already come out and said it's Miles Sanders and it's Boston Scott there. The wide receiving core is just, I mean, a bunch of dudes you've never heard of. Greg Ward, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, Robert Davis, Zach Ertz is banged up, but Reeves doesn't sound like he's going to go. That was the last thing I saw, but
I mean, he came back in that game last week. I would assume that he would he's going to dress. I mean, he wasn't effective afterwards. A fractured rib is rough. I broke my ribs, and I don't play football. I don't get hit by guys, and it was miserable. It's going to be hard. I mean, we saw while he was hurt, though, we finally got the Goddard game.
Finally, it happened 16 weeks in. It only took us 4 months, but we got there, baby.
And, he got hurt in that game early. Ertz did, and then all the targets went to Goddard the rest of the game. I mean, season highs and 12 targets, 9 catches, 91 yards, found the paint. If Ertz is less than 100% or is sitting out, I mean, you'll have to pay up for Goddard. But he's at least held like an all right floor. But yeah, he's really the only guy. Him and, Greg Ward is just the guy I can't get excited about because he's like cheap D.D. Westbrook.
That's not good. That's not who you want to be. But, you mentioned Goddard, and I think a lot of people forget that 2 years ago, this guy was drafted as the top tight end in this class. Everybody loved this dude coming out of college, and now, look, he's lining up wide. He's seeing over 80% of this passing snaps out there. Like, it's really hard for me not to like Goddard this week. 4.9 over on DK. They don't have any other wide receivers. Another guy it's tough for me not to like, Miles Sanders, because look, Daigle, like it or not, and I don't really like it because I faded this dude in all my drafts, but like it or not, this is Miles Sanders' backfield, man.
Yeah, I mean, well, Zach Ertz's trickle down not only helps Goddard, but it helps Sanders as well. 3 games ago, we know Boston Scott was only involved because Miles Sanders was going through dehydration and cramps, and that opened the door for Scott. So we have 2 games now, his last 2 games, that Scott's been involved with Sanders, and even so, Sanders handled 39 of 48 of their backfield carries in that time. He's seen 12 of 25 targets between the two, but even that's 6 per game. And he's run 15 more routes than Scott in that span on 76.5% of their snaps. So he is still maybe not a bell cow, but he is a high-end workhorse who you can absolutely trust, despite the fact that Jordan Howard's coming back. Jordan Howard wasn't cleared for contact for literally a month and a half, and now he's coming back suddenly. It just really reeks of the same thing Jay Ajayi went through, where they wanted to get him involved, and it just wasn't happening because he was gone too long. 6 games is not a full year, I understand, but I mean the dude literally just started taking hits on Thursday. Or earlier in the week. So it's tough to even considering him really an option to take away from Sanders.
It's really, you just gave me I don't know, I just got uncomfortable just even mentioning the words Jay and Ajayi together. That was terrible.
The crazy part is, as far as how injured the Eagles are, they've really just turned it over and still just leaned on Wentz. He's thrown 40 or more passes now in 6 straight games. He's completed 30 or more passes in 3 in a row. He's getting there. It's not pretty. He's only averaging 6.8 yards per attempt over the past month, but he's got 3 300-yard games over that span. And they literally are just having him drop back a ton, even though he's really throwing to 2 tight ends and a running back and a converted quarterback that's a wide receiver. It's really crazy.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I don't even hate Josh Perkins this week. I'm just going to keep playing Josh Perkins. Why not? Come on.
That's the Tariq Cohen of the week right there.
Oh, boy. Yeah, but you get to use that tight end position. All right, let's move on to Cleveland at Cincinnati. 43.5-point total. The Browns 2.5-point favorites on the road. And Nick Chubb here, guy, Reeves. Look, I was a Nick Chubb hater all year. He's come through. He's going to lead the league in rushing more than likely. Are you going to ride Nick Chubb into the sunset here in week 17?
Yeah, my initial builds, I was able to pay up for both Zeke, and we'll talk about Zeke in a little bit. Zeke and Nick Chubb seem like the chalk cash, the cash go-tos this week. I mean, you talked about he's got a pretty nice lead on Christian McCaffrey here for the rushing title. But where Nick Chubb makes his money and where the Bengals give up the bulk of their yardage, just the symmetry is too strong. Cincinnati has allowed the third most rushing yards on explosive runs, runs of 10 or more yards, and they're fifth in rate of rushing yardage allowed on those explosive plays. 50% of their rushing yardage allowed has come on those runs of 10 or more yards. Nick Chubb leads all running backs in runs of 10 or more yards, 793. 55% of his yards have come on those types of runs. So it's just a real spot. Early weather reports have it supposedly going to be windy in Cincinnati. Just really seems like, anyways, we're done trying to see Baker Mayfield try to throw downfield anyways in this offense. So, it seems like just real setup for, them to really clinch this rushing title for Nick Chubb and, really run down the Bengals' throats.
Yeah, and it's really weird because I typically don't like these guys that don't get passes, of course. But right here, Daigle, it's really tough to ignore just how good of a spot this is for Nick Chubb.
If this organization is going to hang their hat on anything, and they can barely do that, it is getting Nick Chubb the rushing title by all means necessary. Same thing the Panthers are going to do for McCaffrey because they're all trying to keep their jobs. Freddie Kitchen is trying to keep his jobs, and I think he will be back because letting him go after year one would be them admitting their own mistake, and teams don't do that. Teams will never admit their mistakes. They need to be
real quick. They can't let him call plays though again, right?
You
have Todd Monken doing that.
You wouldn't think so.
Did you see that report today?
No, actually, no. What was the report?
Yeah, where they asked Kitchens about Monken calling plays, and he said, well, right now I just feel like I'm the most useful at calling plays. He's like,
yep.
Todd's been his girl. It's like, yep, here we go. Yeah.
It's not happening. It's never happening.
How funny is it that in the offseason, remember Doug Wiley, the guy that everyone liked from Hard Knocks, the guy that his belly moved and they all liked him. Remember, he had their report and said last year none of it was Freddie Kitchens, and he couldn't believe that Kitchens got the job. And he said none of what happened on offense was really he shouldn't have got any of the credit for. And we've kind of found out as it played out this season because they've done nothing that they were successful with in the back half of last year. They have not rolled any of that over. They continue just to go three wide for 70% of the game with guys like Cardero Hodge and Damian Ratley. It's crazy that they keep doing the same thing wrong every week, even though it's so ineffective.
And outside of the Jags, they are the worst team inside the five, even just visually. It is painful to watch them run plays.
At least we don't have Antonio Callaway anymore. That's a plus, right? Yeah.
He made it entertaining at least. But no, that's literally all they're trying to accomplish. So I would imagine, especially in a game that dictates better game script than what they faced against the Ravens last week, it's going to be a heavy dose of Nick Chubb.
Yeah, is there anybody else on here, Reeves, on the Cleveland side that you're interested in? Because, Odell and Jarvis, and it sounds like Jarvis is going to require hip surgery after the season anyways. David Njoku, he was a healthy scratch last week. It's really tough to get excited about him. Reeves, to me, I can't like anybody outside of Nick Chubb on the Cleveland Browns.
No, it's hard to like this passing game. Baker's thrown for fewer than 200 yards in 3 of the past 4 games. We're at the point now where just like Odell Beckham, we're okay with serviceable games. He had 8 for 66 against the Cardinals. Last week had 4 for 41 and had a touchdown. And we're like, well, that was better than what we were getting. But he's hit just 70 yards receiving in 2 of his past 9 games. He can get 1,000 yards still this year. I think he's 46 yards shy. But there's no one here you're excited to play for there's upside to be had here. The Bengals are a team that you can get over on, but this Browns passing game has just been something that it's not OJ Howard to us. We're not happy to keep losing money here.
We're at the point of the season. We're at the point where we're asking if 46 yards is in Odell Beckham's range of outcomes. That's how far we've come.
Well, a lot more than 6 yards was in the range of outcomes last week for Tyler Boyd and the Bengals offense because Andy Dalton, Tyler Boyd, those guys just absolutely balled out. Nobody played them, myself included. Daigle, though, it's got to be.
Why did nobody play Tyler Boyd? I could not believe.
No. I played a lot of Tyler Boyd. I did not play a lot of Andy Dalton.
Right. Yeah, I was blown away that Tyler Boyd kind of flew under the radar, man.
Yeah, no, it was a great matchup. It's just I don't think anybody expected 37 DraftKings points. I don't think any of us saw that.
It's hindsight, but that was still such an obvious game stack situation too. Because no one cares about wind. We have to stop with the wind thing on Sunday mornings. No one cares.
You game stack Andy Dalton, Tyler Boyd, and Mike Gesicki and get excited about your lineup. That is tough to do. So you do that, and you can play whoever the hell he is you want. Yeah. On the Bengals side, though, in this one, Joe Mixon, I'm going to assume that he does not have the the
Flu.
flus in the morning. Yeah, like the Miami flu when he's playing at home against Cleveland. But he's priced up now at 7-2. Like, Daigle, can we play Joe Mixon here? Are we going back to Tyler Boyd? What do we do with this Bengals offense?
I would imagine so. Mixon, that was depressing, having the key to every lineup figured out, and then suddenly Sunday morning you get on, and it's just the most depressing video of someone walking out of the tunnel you've ever seen in your life. And I'm not one to gauge that kind of stuff, and when I saw it, I was like, oh no, like this guy, this is disaster. Still though, 23 touches, concerning because it was 43% snap rate, his lowest since week 1, but was still able to bust, I believe it was 9 broken tackles just on 23 touches. So I would imagine, assuming he's over the sickness, which is all we're worried about, is that he is back up to the range, and the reason we chased him last week, because it's still not a bad matchup. More so to the point, though, Tyler Boyd, we know he's going to get targets, but John Ross, we discussed John Ross just a little bit last week, but season high, 13 targets in that game. Led the entire league in air yards, and he played the most snaps since he played in week 3 prior to injury, and perhaps most importantly, missed the injury report altogether this week. He's fully healthy and ready to go. So that seems like someone that I'm very interested in a bounce-back spot, especially if Cleveland can actually build a lead here with Nick Chubb.
Yeah, and it's weird because when I look at the pricing here, everybody's going to play Chubb at 7.5, which means that nobody play Mixon at 7.2 in tournaments. I think Mixon is perfectly fine. You mentioned John Ross. 4.5 for a guy that explosive. I certainly have some interest. Reeves, where are you looking on this Bengals side?
I think Mixon's a guy you can go back to, especially since so many people that hung on were really disappointed last week. You said the touches were still there. The snaps I'm not worried about because remember it was jailbreak scenario. They had to make a ridiculous comeback to send that game into overtime. I haven't seen anything. I tried to look for the stuff I wrote. Tyler Boyd got hurt the play before the last play regulation and couldn't play in overtime. And I haven't found anything on him. Like he's supposed to hurt his hamstring.
Everybody has stopped reporting on the Bengals. Nobody cares anymore.
Yeah, I've been trying to find out if he was at practice or anything this week because he couldn't play in overtime in that game last week. You remember he barely stood up so they get the playoff, so there was no runoff. And they were able to get that last playoff, but I haven't seen anything about if he, what his status is or anything coming in this game. Because it is a week 17.
No one has mentioned it, and he wasn't listed on the injury report. That's all we have. So if he's not listed,
But if he's not on the injury report, not listed, so maybe he must have been a participant. I was just trying to find something because he hurt his hamstring and came out of that game because he would be the obvious guy just based on, kind of having some new life since Dalton came back into the fold. It's hard though for the overall to trust anyone because of the situation they were in last week. Them just chasing points against that Miami secondary in that fourth quarter. They were getting roasted in that game. I remember just looking back, I was like, oh, wow, wait, the Bengals tied it? Like, what happened?
That was the craziest last 3 possessions. I've never seen a 40 seconds like that ever in my life.
Because halfway through the third quarter, we were laughing watching the game like, oh, well, the Bengals secured that bag. Like, they came out and did what they needed to do to get that number 1 pick. And then they're here making this furious comeback. We're like, what are they doing? What's going on? Yeah. But, it's pretty tight, though. Those are the guys you want to play from the Bengals.
All right, let's move on to some quarterbacks. And, Reeves, I'm going to start with you because I assume there is a really cheap Konami code quarterback that you like out there. Am I right?
I don't know. I haven't dug in so far on just looking for the super value on QB. So if there is, bring them up and I'll see if I can touch upon him. But definitely just the guys that stick out. I think Daniel Jones is in play. We talked about. Obviously, I think Ryan Tannehill is in another really good spot. I mean, he's been a top 10 scorer in 7 of his past 8 games. We could potentially be getting a Houston team that has nothing to play for at 4 o'clock. Don't know why that game's at 4 o'clock and it's not at 1 with the other games that matter for them. And even if Houston were to play that straight up, it doesn't really matter because they're terrible against the pass. And, we just saw a couple weeks ago that Ryan Tannehill had 24 points against them. So, they're 27th in passing points allowed, fully healthy and motivated. So, he seems to be the obvious kind of guy because, we still got Derrick Henry. Who knows if we can re-aggravate that hamstring, what he's going to be like. The way you just want to attack Houston is with the passing game. So, he seems to be the guy that sticks out. But who'd you have that I'm overlooking here?
What about a little Robert Griffin III or a little Brett Hundley? Come on, baby.
The only thing about Robert Griffin, because I think that's a good one, but Trace McSorley's going to come in and play. Probably
I think so, too.
Yeah.
I think McSorley's going to play. If Hundley starts, I'd be interested in Hundley.
I'd be interested in Hundley.
If there's no Kyler, I mean, but it sounds like Kyler is going to play, right? And we can't really play Kyler if he's not going to be able to run around.
I mean, but if we can't play Kyler, like, why don't you go to the other side of the ball? Because we could get Blake Bortles. And the Rams are
yes.
If we knew Bortles was going to start.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know yet. That's the thing. That's what I said. We could. Let's approach it slower.
I would love Hundley versus Bortles in a game.
But the Rams are implied to score 28 points, and like it really does sound like they're going to bench everyone.
Yes. McVay has always been team preseason. Like he never plays anybody, and they have nothing to play for. And even their week 17 games. Their Week 17 games under him, when they've already clinched spots, they've basically sat everyone too. I think Sean Mannion started one game one year, and he just threw them to the wolves. He didn't care.
That's why
I'm ready for.
And Jared Goff's contract hikes $20 million in the offseason. So there's no reason to play him if you think he is the guy of their future that they just inked to a new deal.
That's it. I'm ready to lock in some Blake Bortles. Let's do it, baby. Let's do it. Please let Bortles be the guy. That would be a really perfect way to end my 2019. Daigle, I need any quarterback takes from you, man. Who are you looking at QB?
Blake Bortles is mine, but I guess if you want another really bad one, we're going to have to wait on Terry McLaurin's status because he's in concussion protocol. But it's no given that the Cowboys just walk over Washington. We'll talk about Zeke Elliott here in a second. But, we're getting Case Keenum under center whether we like it or not. And Case Keenum from Terry McLaurin, the issue wasn't performance. The issue was turnovers. And they have nowhere else to go if he's turning the ball over. And likely comeback script, negative game script that should help him. So if we get McLaurin, I still like Case Keenum too. And he's stone minimum everywhere.
Oh, I love it. It's cheap quarterback week, baby. And I love it when it happens. I love it. All right, let's talk some running backs. And Daigle, you were just talking about Ezekiel Elliott, and I think this is a guy that all three of us love this week. Big home favorite against Washington. You know that in a game that Dallas has to win to have a shot to win the NFC East, they're going to give him the rock, right, Daigle?
Well, I actually want to pitch this one to Reeves because he said he wanted to mention Elliott, so I want to give him the stats. And plus, I have a long list of running backs, and it did not include Elliott. It should probably, but I think I'm so disgusted by the Cowboys that I just don't even want to talk about them anymore. So I'll just give that to Reeves really quick.
Yeah, Daigle is a Cowboys fan. If you guys,
no one knows that. I keep it under wraps, but
you didn't hide it well there.
Very disgusted.
But yeah, it's pretty easy. I mean, Dak wasn't himself. I mean, it wasn't a game that they found themselves in a hole, but they're huge home favorites. And just, dude, I mean, we talked about it with Saquon last week. I couldn't believe Saquon's ownership. I mean, I was talking to Daigle during Sunday about it because he saw some of the lineups I had.
I will quickly say, because Reeves won't say it himself, but I did. We were in the middle of tournaments and whatnot, and I'm looking up, and it's Saquon Day. I see his ownership's less than 10%.
It was unbelievable.
Who has him? And I look up to the top of every tournament, and then, of course, Lord Reeves just waiting there at the top of every single tournament because he's just fully loaded with Barkley all the way. Good for you, buddy.
But look at Washington's defense these past three games. Saquon Barkley, 279 total yards. Miles Sanders, 172 total yards.
That's
Aaron
really good.
Jones the week before that, 192 total yards.
I'm starting to see a trend.
I mean, it's just really – Zeke's got involved in the passing game a little bit too here. They started to implement Tony Pollard a little bit. Maybe that fumble pulls the reins back on some of that. But it's just really easy. Big home favorite because QB's dinged up, facing a defense that's just getting absolutely slaughtered by running backs. It just seems like a really easy pay-up spot for him.
Yeah, I mean, and he seems almost too cheap. $8K, it feels weird to say somebody is too cheap and they're $8,000 over on DK. But he seems too cheap.
They're giving up 30 bombs to running backs.
Yeah, it's just you just play Zeke. That's what you do. Daigle, where else are you looking at the running back position?
We can just go down the list. Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams isn't cleared. The Packers have full-on motivation, and we saw what Aaron Jones did last week and previously this season when Jamal Williams wasn't available. So his salary's high, but quite frankly, it's not high enough if Jamal Williams out. We did just get a bombshell, actually, that may allow us for our value of the week because Leonard Fournette didn't practice on Thursday. So we may get Stone Men, Raquel Armstead against the Colts.
Oh my God! Between Reeves, Justice Hill teams, and I had Raquel Armstead was my highest owned running back because I took him in the last round everywhere. Finally, our best ball teams are getting their Reeves.
So that's a really good one. Spencer Ware was moved to IR, so now the 3 running backs for the Chiefs are a guy they don't ever want to play in Darwin Thompson, a guy they don't ever want to activate in LaShawn McCoy, and below 5K Damian Williams in a must-win game against the Chargers. We have Austin Eckler if you want to stack the Chiefs because they have to win. So you can just run it back, negative game script with Austin Eckler. We already talked about Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. Rex Burkhead has been carving away into that offense, and that was the key to Saturday's slate. And we even talked about it last week. I'm the one who said I'm going to dive deeper into Rex Burkhead. I just didn't dive deeper into the plays around Rex Burkhead, so it didn't really work out. But I think Rex Burkhead in the game the Patriots need to win. And then also, if you just think the Texans play their backups at 425, you can correlate Derrick Henry and the Titans defense against A.J. McCarron and call it a day.
By the way, DraftKings, they were on the ball with Raquel Armstead. He's 4.4K, not minimum price somehow.
Min on FanDuel, yeah, I should have noted that.
I'm just stunned. I expected to see 3K over on Armstead.
They've been on top of their game.
They've been on it this year. NBA, not so much, but NFL, they have certainly been on it. All right, let's talk some wide receivers. Reeves, who you got for me? Who you looking at? Oh, wait. I forgot running backs. I forgot to talk about Christian McCaffrey because this is the guy they're going to try and get like every record ever. And he's 10K over on DK, and I'm not sure. I know we've talked a lot about some really good running back plays. It still seems like Christian McCaffrey is going to score 10 points more than the best running back on the slate. And I don't know about you, Reeves, but I just feel like I just need to lock in Christian McCaffrey.
I don't know. I think that they're going to try to get him that receiving, to get him the 1,000, but is it a situation where they just get him that and then he's on ice? Because there really is, honestly, there's not even a reason for him to play outside of that. There's not even he shouldn't even be active at this point. But because of that record, maybe or not that record, he could be the 3rd running back ever in the history to get 1,000. Marshall Faulk and Roger Craig are the other 2. 67 yards, totally doable. We said him catch 50. He's the only guy that could effectively catch passes from Will Greer, the Will Greer experiment last week. But he's 216 total yards shy of catching Chris Johnson. I think that is going to be a lot harder to get unless we get a situation to where maybe the Saints check the scoreboard and the Packers are up big and they call off the dogs because their run defense is too good. And honestly, the Panthers haven't been in a situation to keep McCaffrey. It's the reason why he fell off the pace in the yardage is because they haven't been in any type of game script to continue getting him like running back or rushing touches. He's run for just 62 yards per game over the past 6 weeks because they're terrible and they've lost all those games. But over that span, he is first in the NFL in receptions with 61. He's tied with Michael Thomas in targets with 73.
Amazing.
So, I mean, he's doing it all in the receiving game. That's where you're getting your money. But, I think this is a game where they could get him that 1,000 and then just get him off the field.
The good thing is if we do get a min value play, or go ahead, Crain.
Well, I'm just going to say the offensive coordinator, Scott Turner, did come out and say that he was going to get him the ball any way he can against the Saints. I sort of believe him. I kind of do.
Well, that's what they've been doing all year.
Yeah.
That's fine. He's crushed it all year. I mean, I'm fine with that. I don't think they're going to pull him or slow it down at all is what I'm saying.
The annoying thing is that it's only Thursday at 9 p.m. and I can already feel myself tilting from that situation on Sunday afternoon because I'm going to get it wrong. And it's going to come down to that. The good thing is though, yeah, if you get a Stone Men running back or wide receiver, then it's pretty easy because then that's also going to shift ownership because no one's going to pay for anyone but McCaffrey. So it's one of those situations where you just pay him and don't worry about fading him because you're going against an entire field.
Yep, I like McCaffrey plenty. All right, now we can move on to wide receivers. Reeves, who you got for me?
Wide receivers.
It's a tougher week, right?
Yeah, it depends on what you like. It depends what you're playing. If we're talking cash or we're talking tournaments. I think the cash play is pretty obviously A.J. Brown again for what we talked about with Tannehill. And our process was right on A.J. Brown last week. He got shadowed by Marshawn Lattimore for all 34 of his routes. He had one reception. He had a 50-yard rushing touchdown. In my chat on Sundays, I was telling people, I was like, listen, he's going to oscillate back. He's not going to score a touchdown every game. Even if you project him for a half touchdown a game, that means the other half he's not scoring a touchdown. It's a tougher matchup. He's not going to score this week. And, the process was good, and he had a 50-yard rushing touchdown, so we look like idiots. But, I think this is a spot where you can go back to him in cash. The target share is strong. We talked about just targeting Houston. In tournaments, I kind of like the Cowboys guys in tournaments. Just because Washington is really down to a skeleton crew in the back end. I mean, they have to play Cody Sensabaugh, Aaron Colvin, Kayvon Webster last week. Their top 3 cornerbacks, they allowed the Giants wide receivers to catch 18 passes for 227 yards and 2 touchdowns. We've got Gallup and Cooper in some spots. I mean, Cooper has really shown a low floor too. Over the past 6 games, he's had just 1 touchdown. So we know nobody wants to play him, but we also know he's capable of these big spike weeks. Gallup over the past 7 games actually has more targets than Cooper, 2 more. So if you want to go that route and just go even cheaper, I think that they're interesting because no one's going to want to play those Cowboys receivers.
Is anybody going to play Courtland Sutton?
I want to. He's just been bad with Drew Lock, man.
Yeah, I figured I'd put him at 10 to 12% ownership, which may be too high, honestly.
I like Courtland Sutton this week, and I know he's been bad with Lock.
It's a good matchup.
It's a great matchup. He's not going to be owned. He feels a little too expensive, and when that's the case, I kind of like guys because that really means that nobody's going to play him. I like Courtland Sutton really under the radar in tournaments.
He'd probably be on the I don't know if there's a week 17 buy low model from Hermsmeyer, but I might imagine that Sutton's probably on there.
Air yards is going through some issues, so I doubt he's going to worry about a buy low model in week 17. But who knows?
RIP Air Yards again. That's a sad story.
No, I think it's fine. It was just going through a little bit of Christmas issues as the scotch was being laid down with vanilla Coke or whatever the hell he does.
That's disgusting. All right, Daigle, what receivers you got for me?
Small list. Devontae Adams, as we said, the Packers need a win and the Niners need to lose for them to lock up the number 2 seed. So Devontae Adams has seen double-digit targets in 6 of his last 7 games since returning from injury. They literally go nowhere else. And it would be sprinkled in with Aaron Jones, but even taking Jamal Williams off the field helps Devontae Adams a little bit. And then the tournament play, I think, would be DJ Shark, whose salary on FanDuel in particular sunk below $6K, despite the fact his usage stayed the same last week. He did seem a little hobbled, but now we would be 7 days removed or 14 days removed from the injury altogether, 7 days since he last suited up. And this Colts defense, I know they didn't show it in their limited showing against Will Grier, but remember before that, got nuclear bombed against Michael Thomas, 61-yard touchdown to Mike Evans. Khalif Raymond went deep for the Titans. Will Fuller just went off against them. This Colts defense has been very bad for a month and a half, and it will probably be forgotten since they did get over on Will Grier, which anyone can do. So, I think DJ Chark's a cheapy tournament play.
Another cheapy tournament play I got for you, and I hope nobody goes here, and I hope that he plays, first of all, because this team could rest him. Kenny Stills is going to crush it if he gets a chance. If Kenny Stills is out there, he is going to smash it this week.
Did I freeze? No, you didn't freeze. You're good. That's such an interesting situation because, as Reeves talked about, it is 425, and the Texans are going to know. But Bill O'Brien also is the kind of coach that would play everyone just to feel more manly. And this is a team that needs a bye more than anyone. Deshaun Watson battling back and ankle injuries. Kenny Stills battling hamstring. Will Fuller, groin injury, not even playing. DeAndre Hopkins has an illness, and he's been banged up the past month as well. So they need that bye, man. They need to use this week as their bye and then go into the wild card. But again, it may not matter with Bill O'Brien.
I feel like Hopkins might be the one guy that they sit. I could definitely see Hopkins being the guy that they sit. Reeves, anybody else for you?
No, that's pretty much it. Covered a lot of ground. Like I said, just keep an eye on things as we get close to these next few days. If anyone sits out to open up some of these cheap value guys.
Daigle, who are we pairing with Blake Bortles?
Tyler Higbee. Just keep it easy.
All right, Josh Reynolds. We'll do that. Bortles to Reynolds for all the money.
Josh Reynolds isn't bad.
Look how serious you got right there. You got so serious. You're like, ooh.
Brandon Cooks, I would almost guarantee Brandon Cooks is definitely one of the ones sitting.
Well, good, because he's going to be sitting for my rosters too. That dude just, whoo. That has gotten ugly. All right, guys, before we jump off here, I want to remind you, if you've been enjoying the show on YouTube, click the like button, click the subscribe button, comment what you're doing to prepare for Daigle's birthday. It's 11 months away, so it's always good times. Can't be too early with that sort of thing, so make sure you do that. Also, college football pack for the bowl games, $40 for the rest of the season. RotoGrinders, they've been crushing with the college football usage, and look, there are just so many damn games out there. Take advantage. $40, that ain't nothing if you're firing any sort of volume. So make sure you take advantage of that. Daigle, where can the people find you?
Roto World Football Podcast. We are done with shows on NBC Sports for the time being, but the podcast for playoff game previews will still be there.
Yeah, we're gonna miss you on those shows, buddy. That's
you didn't watch a single one, you liar. You did not watch a single one. But I still love you.
Okay, Reeves, where can we find you? I just got called out. Golly.
I mean, we're all busy Sunday mornings. It's fair.
It's true. It's very true.
I mean, Sharp Football Analysis. Week 17 worksheet is up. I have Week 17 DFS article on Saturday morning, hopefully with some of those value plays that we talked about. And then, come around for the playoffs because if you're into sports betting too, the picks have been hot on the site. Even on the college side. So if you're into betting and winning some, getting some of that Christmas money back, head over there.
Oh, God. I'm going to have to really have a good week to get some of that back. But we got to get off here. Now, I want to thank Rich Hribar for joining me. I want to thank John Daigle for joining me. I want to thank the D-Train for producing. I'm Eric Crain. We'll catch y'all later. Thanks for listening, everybody. See you later.